Today's date is August 12th, 2025. Time is 5:30 p.m. Now let's go over. I'm in the heart of D.C. right now. At any given time, I'm just a few blocks from the Capitol or the few blocks from the White House. I see what's going on in this town, and I've been living here for quite a while. Now, of course, you hear a bunch of stories about what's happening here and there, especially with this government shutdown. So let's go ahead and break this down for the people who may not fully understand. Of course, you have two different points of view. One is, the Democrats, they're keeping us from opening up. They closed down the government. They're keeping us from opening it up because they want to give Medicare to illegal citizens. Okay. Then you have the Democratic point of view. And of course, they're talking about that, and rightfully so, that we don't want the subsidies for the Obamacare to expire at the end of the year. Therefore, a lot of people will not be able to afford the ACA. Not only that, but also in this big, beautiful bill, a lot of the premiums, most of the premiums around the country will raise by at least double. So they're trying to protect the American people. They're not trying to keep the government closed. They're just trying not to let the Republicans pull a fast one over the American people. So they're sticking to their guns. Now, a lot of these people who are all those Democrats, they're close. Look, man, these guys are fighting for you. Now, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. Sort of like watching a tennis match go back and forth. And I'll call a spade a spade. If the Democrats are messing up, I'll call it. If the Republicans are messing up, I'll call it as well. But the Democrats are actually fighting for the American people. The people who are undocumented in this country. There's many Americans can't even get into the Medicare program, let alone undocumented people. Now, there are probably some consideration for people who claim asylum, and there might be some type of help for them, but they're the very, very few, the exception, not the rule. But a majority, 90, probably 9% of the undocumented people cannot qualify for Medicaid. I mean, they barely even want to know people know that they're in the country, let alone qualify for Medicaid. So this is a big lie that the Republicans are talking about. Okay, now let's talk about the Affordable Care Act initially. Now, the Affordable Care Act, I'll let you know, is no longer Affordable Care Act. Back in the days, it was. I know when it first came out, me and my family joined it. I was paying like $400 a month for like a family of four. My kids were pretty young at that time. That was great. That was the Affordable Care Act. Then what happened was a lot of companies started jumping ship because it was costing them too much and they weren't getting enough people to join. They weren't getting enough people in. So the pool of insurance companies dwindled to where you only had a handful of insurance companies. That's when the premiums skyrocketed. Why did that happen? Well, you got to look back when it was first legislated about the ACA. The Democrats had it all set up. They had a public option, and what a public option does is that if for some reason you're not able to afford the private insurance, you had a public option where you could buy the insurance from the government. Therefore, it was supposedly keeping the price down from the private industries, but you still had that public option. What happened with that is the Republicans said, no, we're not going to sign this bill. We're not going to pass it because we want you to take out the public option. Now, after a long way to go, they did decide to take out the public option. I got to say, Obama shouldn't have signed that, but they were interested in getting something across the line in a certain amount of time. But he shouldn't have signed that into law. It was admirable. It was magnanimous. It was a good gesture, but it wasn't right. And they should have kept on working on it until they got it right. As a result, they didn't have the public option in. The private insurance companies saw this. They upped their ante. A lot of them jumped ship. And that's why we're dealing with what we're dealing with today. Now, the only thing the Republicans have said correct is that the ACA doesn't work all that great. However, what do they have to replace it? They've been talking about it for years now. So you can't get rid of something that may not be as effective for nothing, which is what they want to do. They want to replace it with absolutely nothing. What did Trump say during the debates? I have concepts of a plan. Now they're telling the Democrats, okay, let's sign this in, let's get the government back open and we'll work on it. BS. You ain't gonna work on nothing. They already signed their soul. You got them. So, these Republicans are something else because they represent big business. Here in the United States, medicine is a business. I was in the medical field for 20 years. It's a big business. It's a bottom line. It's part of it's part of our country's income. That's how these people make their money. This is a capitalistic society. Where there's countries around the world more concerned about their citizens and whether they're taken care of. But that's not here in the United States. All you guys wearing these hats, make America great again, try to make America great by doing right by the American people. As again, I'm not a Democrat, definitely not a Republican, but you're not making America great when the top 1% in this country is taking you guys for a ride. It's not red against blue. It's right against wrong. It's red and blue against green. And what the Republicans are doing is they are protecting the people who own the green, because a lot of them are in that area. Look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. I never thought I'd be speaking about her in a positive light. She has done a lot of bad things, but even she sees the writing on the wall. She sees 2026. She sees what these guys are doing, and all those other Republicans see that as well. They see it. They know it. They know this guy at the top of the ticket is an idiot. They know that. They know J.D. Vance, he just talks in circles. They know that. They know that. But there's no money in it for them. There's no power or prestige in it for them from the American people. But there are people, I guarantee you, that are greasing these guys' palms. That's who they are subservient to, not the American people. They could care two craps about them. They're concerned about, these guys getting paid. All these people on these talk show hosts, these guys are getting paid. They're not newscasters, Fox News and all that. They're paid actors. They say, hey, look, you pay me $200 and something thousand a year. I'll say whatever you want me to say. I'll say whatever you want me to say. Hey, look, you want me to tell you that? I don't believe it. But I'm going to say it anyway because you're paying me to do so. And those suckers don't know anyway. Those American suckers don't know anyway. They're stupid. They don't read. They're not critical thinkers. They're going to believe whatever we say. That's what they think of you. They think you're stupid. Hey, prove to them you're not. But that's the reason why this government is shut down. It has nothing to do with immigrants taking, taking all these subsidies and all of this, health care. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact, you're right, the ACA doesn't work as well as it used to, but it's what we have until it's replaced with something better. They're making you believe one thing when it's actually something else. So do me a favor. Be a critical thinker. Do your own due diligence. Read. Go back into history. Find out what happened. Just don't take your neighbor's point of view or your political party's point of view. Find out for yourself. Think. Think, man. These guys are screwing you over. You are being played. Have a good day.